I'm going to start by saying that today I got my first shot, my first vaccine of COVID early at noon. And I got it because they put a gun to my head. Okay. A couple months back, I went to Iceland to visit my son. We went with my wife and we celebrated 45 years of marriage. Happy marriage. Not too many people get married these days, so they probably don't know what that means. Um, and they put me in prison. I was in jail for 5 days. They put me in a hotel under quarantine and fed me, but I couldn't get out. And the 3 times I had to have the test mouth. They go all the way to your throat and up your nose. Leaving Frankfurt, arriving Reykjavik. When I got there, they did the test. When I got out, they did the test, and they did another test in between. So I had really 4 tests. Not very friendly test. And in a couple months, I'm going to be going to a country that is a higher risk. So I just don't want to, I want to avoid the hassle. That's what it is. And so just get the stupid vaccine. I don't know what poison they put in my arm. Just get it over with and go on. Now, do I care about this COVID thing? Am I scared that I might get, the disease or whatever? For me, it's been a non-issue for the last year and a half that thing's been around. I don't care about it at all. I don't read about it. The only thing that concerns me about the COVID is the economic effect. You know, the consequences of the economic measures, the draconian measures that the politicians are taking. That I'm concerned about. Other than that, I don't care. I don't know anything about this COVID. Now, do I believe that there's a disease out there that's killing people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Well, the answer is I don't know. I don't know. First, I don't read much about it. Okay, I don't care about it. It's not an issue for me. The only thing I can reason about it is that you have countries like Cuba, Iran, Russia, China, North Korea. They seem to have problems as well, and I don't think they're going to work for the U.S. companies, the big corporations. Okay, I don't think they're all in cahoots with this. Now, I think there must be some problem if all these countries, which are enemies, are having a problem, within their countries. On the other hand, you have this issue where you have these big corporations making a lot of money with this vaccine or these vaccines. They've got many of them out there. You have a political issue, for example, here in Europe, the Sputnik, I call it the Sputin, Sputin. The Sputin vaccine is not allowed. It's not approved. And you would think that, if you're just trying to save lives, if this is a health issue, whoever comes with a vaccine, hey, you're welcome. Please come in and do whatever you have to save our population. And when they go in there and they say, look, we're not going to accept yours, we're going to accept ours, they don't care about health. They're doing politics. And so the question is, you look at these things, companies making money, you've got this politics in there where they say, we're not going to accept your vaccine. We'd rather have ours because we're making money off of it. We don't want to give you money. Then it's not a health issue. It's a political issue. And so I can understand why a lot of people have doubts out there about, this whole COVID issue. What is it? It's an issue of information. And right now, I don't have the information, all the information I need to tell you one way or the other. And again, for me, it's a non-issue. Talking about information, we have a little incident that happened that not most of you are aware of. Most of you are not aware of, okay? And that's that they overthrew the government of Afghanistan. Some hillbillies, Arab hillbillies, they came down and took over the government, kicked the United States military out of there, or forced them out, you could say. Um, is it because I'm going to talk about politics or military issues? No, I don't care about those at all. I do care about economics, but in this case, I care about another issue, which I want to raise in relation to extinction. Okay, and it's got to do with this little picture here. Put it on Facebook, and here you see them. People rushing to the airport, trying to get out of the country. Probably middle class to upper middle class, rich people. Those are the people that are in that C-17 airplane. Others are clinging from the paint of the airplane of the C-17, trying to get out of there. And why am I raising this? I'm saying we got two issues here, and the first one is the United States is is the last empire. There's not going to be another empire after the United States. There won't be a Chinese, a Russian, a South American, and African empire. No, the United States is the last empire. And what I mean by that is if the United States, not if, let's say when the United States economy collapses, that's the end of it for the world. That's the end of man, essentially. Okay, and it's not too far away. And so right now, I think that whether you like the United States government, whether you hate it, is irrelevant. Right now, we have to help the United States government, not economy, right, fall apart. They disintegrate. That's the first issue. The other issue has got to do with this. These people rush to the airport at the last moment. And you might ask, well, why did they rush a month ago? Why did they leave 3 months ago? Why did they leave a year ago? And the answer is information. Misinformation, disinformation. How's that? I mean, here you have the president of Afghanistan telling his people on the last day saying, folks, we got to defend Kabul. It's not going to fall. We got all the military there, everything in place to fight these hillbillies coming from the mountains. We're going to defend our government. And after he talks, the first thing he does, he gets on an airplane and gets out of the country. I love that. He needs, what are you going to give, a Purple Heart, an Iron Cross for bravery? Yeah, he's going to defend Kabul from the United Arab Emirates. Yeah, great. Disinformation. He tells people, stay there, fight, and he leaves. And so why am I bringing this up? Well, a lot of people really don't believe. It's not a question of belief, it's a question of understanding. A lot of people don't understand the mass extinction theory that I'm proposing. Okay? Part of that mass extinction theory has to do with timing, with how much time we have, which is what people want to know. That's a key issue. People say, when is it going to happen? And well, I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not an astrologer. I can't tell you that. Okay? So the issue is, if you understand the theory, you might do something about it. You might take some kind of precaution or prepare in some way if you understand the theory and realize that it's going to come very soon. But 90% of the people probably don't even understand the theory. Out of the 10 remaining percent, maybe 9% don't believe it's going to happen in a very short time, that it's imminent. Okay? They don't think it's imminent, and so they don't take any precaution. They think it might happen, and it might happen in 500 years, so I don't have anything to worry about. It's not going to be on my watch, so nobody worries about it. And they're going to end up like these Afghanis. They're going to be hanging out to the paint of the airplane when the global economy collapses, because it's going to be very sudden. It's going to not give you time to react or to prepare. Okay, so this is the issue. And see, if you knew in advance what the theory is about, if you have an understanding of the theory and realize that it's going to happen quite soon within your lifetime, you might make preparations. Otherwise, you don't. Okay, so it's imagine I'm Jesus Christ. Okay, I come over here and I wave my hand and say, believe in me, you will be saved, you will go to heaven. Okay, I'm the Savior. But if you don't believe, not in me, in the theory, if you don't understand the theory, if you don't think it's going to happen very soon, well, then you don't take any measures. Okay, so it's more or less like that. And some people have said, let's put it this way, I don't want to live in a world without love. If everybody's gone, do you want to be the last human on earth? Do you want to live alone, just pondering, that humanity's not around you anymore and that there's going to be no future for the world and you're just one of the last or maybe the last person on earth? And some people say, I don't want to be that person. I'd rather die, commit suicide or whatever. Well, that's a decision you don't want to take today. That's my answer to that. See, all these people, they thought they were going to fight Kabulians. They thought they were going to fight, maybe they thought their city would be defended, etc., etc. And when the time came, they all rushed to the airport. So at first they didn't take the decision. When they took the decision, it was too late. And that's more or less the situation with the collapse of the global economy. It's going to be very fast, maybe in a matter of a couple of weeks or whatever. And then when you rush to do something about it, it's too late. And you say, why didn't I think of that? And you might say, I don't want to commit suicide. I want to live. So it's too late to make that decision. So don't make it today. Make it the day that it happens. Okay, that's when you decide whether you want to live or not. Okay, so just keep all that in mind. Okay, so here we have an idea of why we're not going to last very long. Okay, and again, it's got to do with the U.S. economy. Here's an analysis that came out this week, and the first, the individual, he's some kind of an expert on economics. You can find his article out there. So the U.S. economy has bounced back with a lot of consumption. Consumption, right? A lot of that consumption is going to China. It's one of the reasons China has such a strong economy. What we're seeing is the United States is starting to fall behind in economic growth. Okay, I've been trying to tell people that, but they don't believe it. Well, here's a guy who at least is on the right track as far as I'm concerned. U.S. growing debt like crazy. We have debt to GDP that is fueling the majority of our so-called economic growth. Is that growth? We'll find out. So is it really economic growth when you borrow money or print money, send checks to people who turn around and buy goods on Amazon, and these goods come in from China? Okay, you see where this guy is headed with all this, okay? Okay, he goes in here. Let me see if we put it on this side. It says GDP is 70% consumption. Talking about U.S. GDP, right? Gross domestic product, by the way. And as the economy has rebounded back on a GDP basis, it's done so with a tremendous increase in a trade deficit. Multiple percentage points of GDP have come from an increase in the trade deficit, and that's not real GDP. Okay? Consumption is not really the economy. The economy is about what? Production, not consumption. Okay? Using money to buy stuff. I'll give you an example, and that's Spain in the both 17th and 18th century. That's when their empire, remember Spain was a big empire. It had a naval, the naval fleet. They conquered South America, et cetera, et cetera. It was big. And then they started to fall apart. Why? Because one of the reasons, okay, they got all this gold from the Americas, gold and silver. And instead of putting factories, building something with that, what they did, they used the money, especially the rich people who got all that money. They used the money to buy stuff from where? From Holland, from England, from France. And so what they did was stimulate the economies of those countries up north. And today, well, we know the results. Spain ended up being a poor country. Just now, it's coming back up a little bit, okay? But until the 19th century, Spain was nothing. It fell apart completely, more or less like the Ottoman Empire. Again, buying stuff, being consumers and not producers. Okay, that's what this is more or less about. And when you buy goods produced in Asia with stimulus money, okay, it shows up as GDP. But it's really Asian GDP. It's consumption in the United States. With 5 million fewer jobs because of the COVID, lots of them in tourism, right? It shows up mathematically in the productivity equation, but it's really Chinese productivity. Because if you just consume goods, you're not really having economic growth, okay? So keep this in mind. You can't become a consumer country. You have to be a producing country. Producers is what creates GDP, not consumption. Okay? And that's what this fellow is arguing. It says we are looking at a roadmap that is clearly headed towards the U.S. dollar losing its sole reserve currency status. Remember, the dollar is the currency of the world, more or less, here and there. And it might lose that status. That's what this fellow is saying. The dollar has been in a series of declining highs for decades. It goes back to the 80s. For that reason, I think when we get to the next break to the lower level, the dollar is going to go past the most recent low of around 80 and even take out the low of 70. So I think there's easily 25% downside in the US dollar. Okay, so yeah, I'm saying that the dollar is going to lose value and money is going to have no value at some point. Nobody's going to want to accept it. Can you imagine no one accepting the dollar, not even God? You go to heaven and you want to buy your way in there and they say, well, no, we're not going to allow that. Okay, we don't want your money. Okay, so here's the notion for post-stimulus, what we can expect in the near future once they lift all these restrictions, okay, after my vaccine. Almost any profession you ask, they say they have a hard time getting workers. Okay, well, no surprise. People are making more money or the same amount of money by not working. Okay, well, we're all more or less in tune with that. We know what's going on out there. So what will happen when these stimulus programs ultimately end, or people actually have to start paying for their rent? Okay, and so he says there's going to be tremendous economic disruption. Okay, people are relying on stimulus, and the stimulus is responsible completely for this economic growth. Okay, so What's going to happen after the stimulus stops? Will people go back to work? Will they want to work? I mean, they got used to the easy money. They say, hey, I kind of like that. It was like retirement. I had all this time on my hand. The government sending me the check. I'm consuming stuff that's made in China. Okay? Something is wrong, folks. And I'm not sure the United States can come out of that so easily. Okay? And again, if the U.S. economy falls apart, China is not going to replace it, because if the U.S. dollar, for example, or the economy goes to pieces, Europe goes to pieces, and China will have no one to sell to. So China won't grow either. And militarily, I don't think China will, the U.S. will not allow the Chinese to, match them militarily. So there's going to be a problem in the world. And that's just coming up, maybe 5-6 years at the most. Okay, so once again, all I can urge you is to think about these things, think that at least it might happen, and to take whatever measures you can. You don't want to be rushing to the airport at the last moment, okay, like the Kabulians. Okay, here's another bit of information. It says Social Security could be insolvent within 8 years. That came out today. Okay, and so for those of you who are in your 20s and 30s, whatever, maybe you think you're going to get some Social Security, retirement money. I would say think again. I don't think it's going to happen. Not for you guys. Okay. Okay, here's another bit of data came out today also, or I think yesterday. Data from the 2020 census released earlier this month shows that the United States has become significantly more urban in the past 10 years. And I've been saying that for a while now, that, urbanization is taking place. There's this transition from the country to the city, not only in the United States, the entire planet. You choose the country. You choose the country, everybody's moving from the country to the cities, from the farmlands to the cities. The farmlands are falling into the hands of big corporations, agricultural corporations, which mass produce the food and feed the cities. That's the way it's working. Can this process continue endlessly to the point where everybody's in the cities and the countryside is only in the hands of the big corporations? So the more this transition proceeds, the more people are squashed into the cities, the fewer people they're going to have. Because in the cities you can't have children, and so you have that situation where population doesn't grow, because you have everybody concentrated in the cities. In the cities, the dollar is falling, the euro is falling, the money is becoming worth less, not worthless, but it's worth less, okay? And at some point, you can't even reach the end of the month, or barely. There's no disposable income. That's got to have an effect on the companies that produce goods and services. And it's all intertwined, okay? And we cannot escape this process. There's nothing we can do. Intelligence cannot overcome this. Technology cannot overcome this. The fact that we can foresee events, we can't do anything about this, okay? So, it says the population in the U.S. is being increasingly concentrated in cities. So we have all these things going on, okay? This is what the density map looks like of the United States. You can see that it's not evenly spread out. You can say that just about any country in the world. But what's important about this is that no new cities will be founded. We will not create new cities in Russia, in Japan, in China. No new cities. Okay, this is the issue. So all these countries that, whatever city you see on the planet today, essentially those will become bigger. Everybody will simply rush to the cities from the countryside, to existing cities. There's no way you can create a new city. We're not in the age of colonization anymore. Okay, so whatever cities you see on the planet today, that's what man dies with, essentially. Maybe one city here or there might be founded. You might find an example out there. I can give you a couple examples of that. Not really founding new cities, but enlarging little villages and turning them into more than towns and cities. One was where I spent my prison term in Eloy. Eloy, if you look at the city of Eloy, it was nothing until the 1990s. Then they built the prison. And suddenly, all these services started coming around the prison system, the federal prison that was there. Same thing happened, you can look it up, to this city where, Florence in Colorado, where they have the ADX, the most maximum security prison in the world. Built underground so that you cannot escape. Again, a city that grew with the prison system. And that's another reason that the United States does not like to legalize drugs, because it uses that remember, most of the people who go to prison today, maybe up to 85%, I would think, judging by what I saw, are in there for drugs. And so imagine if they were to legalize all drugs. Well, then they would get rid of the entire prison system. Okay, there wouldn't be any prisons. And what if we do it in reverse? What if we raise the penalties to those who deal with drugs, who traffic with drugs? Well, then you need prisons. And you put a prison, and around that prison, all these services pop up out of nowhere. So one way to found cities today is through prisons. Okay, that's what I'm trying to say here. Okay, but you can't do that all over the world, and it's not really going to create a population boom. It's just a little drop of water in the ocean, essentially. Okay, so yeah, we're going to die with the cities we have on the planet today. Okay. Okay, so these are some of the things I look at or think about when I'm looking at the global economic collapse, specifically the United States economic collapse. I look at inflation, decline in real wages, okay, real wages maintained, the debt to GDP ratio, stock market crash, or, is there going to be a stock market crash? Will it be the last one, the next one we have? Will it be the next to the last one? These are the issues I look at. Cryptocurrency volatility, lots of cryptocurrency lately. New business, people are at home, they receive these government checks. They have $100 maybe here and there, and they say, I'm at home, this is so easy. I just open an account and invest in cryptocurrencies. And essentially it's gambling. Okay, it's gambling from home. You don't have to go to Las Vegas or what is it, Atlantic City. You don't pull on the one-armed bandits anymore. What you do is you play the stock market, play it from home. Okay, so a lot of people getting into that. Especially with the money that the government gives them. Not very good because it's totally unproductive stuff again. Okay, unemployment, I look at that. Protests and riots. You got to look at how many riots we're having now lately in many countries. Okay, that's another thing in the barometer that I look at. Condition out there of the socio-political state of mind. People want to go out there and protest for whatever because they're not very happy with many things. Okay, so the more of those that we have, it's a signal, it's a clue that something is not right. Okay, disinformation, tremendous disinformation. We had all the information we needed. We could probably, if you had all the information you needed to make a decision on whether there's going to be a global collapse, economic collapse, or even a collapse of the U.S. economy, then maybe you would act differently. But you don't have all that information at your fingertips, and a lot of that information is disinformation. Do you think the government's ever, any government for that matter, is going to tell you, panic, panic, the world's coming to an end, we have no solutions to our economic problem? Do you think a government would say that? No, they say exactly the opposite. They'll always tell you the opposite. Everything's okay, folks, go back to work, we're doing fine, we're going to get out of this mess. That's what they tell you. And so they blindside you to the realities, okay? And it's going to happen like the people, like the Kabulians. They were blindsided to what was really going on. You had the United States and the Taliban, they had meetings behind essentially a secret meeting or behind the backs of the government of Afghanistan. They reached a deal there. And I'm sure a lot of people in Afghanistan did not hear about any of that. And so they were comfy at home saying, well, everything's going to be all right. And everything wasn't all right because they lacked the information. And the same thing with if there's going to be an economic collapse, the government will not inform you that there is going to be an economic collapse. They're not going to tell you, look, the dollar's on its way down, we can't do anything about it. All you have is private people like this gentleman who I quoted just a minute ago. They'll tell you. But, some people believe him, other people believe others. Some people are bearish, other people are bullish, so you got all kinds of people out there. And so, people are not aware of the reality, okay, or the realities. Okay? And yeah, I look at also Chinese economic growth. Is China growing? And what I say there in the case of China is that China used to grow at a much higher rate. It was growing like when Deng Xiaoping took over the government, it was growing at like 25% and annually. And now it's down to 6, 5 maybe. And that's if you believe the Chinese numbers. Okay, so again, you got to be careful with the disinformation. Very important point, because based on that, you take your decisions and you have your beliefs. And you got to be very careful about what information you have out there today. Okay, so just be on your toes. Okay, One fellow says, economic collapse has a cause, and it isn't because a species disappears because it is too old. Well, he's got it wrong. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm not saying that economic collapse has anything to do with species being old. So, one more time, I want to get this straight. Here you have it. Mass extinction has to do with economic collapse. It's got to do with the overturning of what? Of the ecological pyramid. Background extinction is that's where the species ages. And aging is what? Overturning of the population pyramid, not ecological pyramid, but the population pyramid, and the loss of genetic diversity. Okay? So I just want to make sure people understand what the theories are. Okay, the theories are mass extinction has to do with food, with economic collapse, and background extinction, which is the extinction of a single species, that has to do with the aging of the species, meaning population pyramid overturn and genetic loss of genetic diversity. Okay, so at least get the theory right. Okay, it doesn't mean you're going to believe in it. It means that you got to get it right so you understand what I'm saying here. Okay. Okay, another fellow says that all these mass extinctions happen because of catastrophic events, which is the party line, is what all paleontologists out there essentially believe. Okay, it says historical context indicates cataclysm as one of those environmental changes that cause extinctions. Yeah, historical, no, that's the paleontology world believes that you can only produce mass extinctions through cataclysms or catastrophic acts of God. Okay, large bolides, tectonic and volcanic, etc., and the geologically obvious worldwide flooding events. Have no idea what he's talking about. Maybe he thinks all this has to do with the Bible, biblical flood. I have no idea what this fellow could be referring about worldwide floods. I mean, floods never killed a single species. So I'm not sure what he's talking about when he says floods. And I don't think there's any paleontologist that talks about the flooding of the world. Okay, so I don't know where he got that. Okay, but this is my take on this, and that's that catastrophic or catastrophes never cause a single extinction. Catastrophes have nothing to do with extinction. Nothing at all. So you have the Ordovician. One of the theories, a prominent theory, is that a supernova nearby caused there was a gamma ray burst, and apparently one of the theories, because there's sub theories there, one of the theories is knock the air out of the earth. Like what is it, foghorn leghorn? You hit him in the stomach and all his feathers come out of him and then come back. And that's more or less what these people are saying. They're saying the zap, the gamma ray burst, hit the earth, knocked the air out of the earth, killed all the animals that had to die, and then the air came back. That's one of the theories. Okay, and who's behind this? NASA. Why? Because NASA wants you to believe that all catastrophic theories are true, and they have to do with extraterrestrial impacts or causes. Okay. Permian, there's a couple theories there. One is that you have volcanic activity. Another one is that you have methane sprouting out of the seabeds, filled the earth, created this winter, this cloud that prevented sunlight from reaching the plants. So the plants die, the herbivores die, the carnivores die. The only problem with all these theories, including the Cretaceous one, which is the asteroid impact, is that they cannot explain selectivity. The only thing that an extinction theory has to explain. And the way they do it, they have an ad hoc sub-theory for every different types of animals. How did the flying reptiles die? Well, they got hit with all these burning stones, these hot stones that came from the explosion. How did the animals in the sea die? Well, it turns out that the asteroid fell on a pile of sulfur, and that sulfur acidified the water. Some animals could take it, some could not, and those that could not died. And they have all these sub-theories to explain how this guy died, not this other guy died. And they cannot explain even with that. No catastrophe ever caused a single extinction. Okay, Mother Nature doesn't use catastrophes to do extinction. The way Mother Nature does it is the natural way. What she does is she goes in there and she says, look, we're going to deprive you of food. Now, if you're deprived of food, will you die? And I think the answer is yes. I mean, you might think that you might live, but no. If I deprive you of food, at least for a year, I think you will die for sure. And if we deprive any animal even plants for that matter, with of food for at least a year, well, that plant, that animal will die. And so at least we have a mechanism we can all understand. No food, you die, period. We're done. Now the question is that how Mother Nature works? Yeah. If the food source, in this case the plants that live for millions of years, disappear because they go through their population pyramid overturn, they've been around for too long, they lost their genetic diversity, the plants are no longer there, the ones that the herbivores depended on and established a long-term relation with, yeah, those animals will die, and the carnivores that depended on them will go with them. Meanwhile, while other plants are expanding at the expense of those plants, and you have these little animals that depend on those plants, those thrive. And those become the next generation of plants and animals that dominate the planet, the landscape. So that's a more rational theory than saying that, an asteroid hit the Earth, or that you have a supernova with gamma rays that bombarded the Earth. That only gives job security to NASA, okay? And they do have a special interest in that. That's why they use those funds to fund university researches that highlight extraterrestrial causes. Okay, here we have another issue. Fellow says, I thought the more evolved, the less genetic diversity. Yeah, that's true. And that's what my graph showed. Here's the graph again from my book. Okay, the more you go forward in time, the more that the animal is evolved and the less genetic diversity there is. Okay, so that is what I'm saying. So I'm not sure what this fellow understood, if he's questioning, he's putting it in a negative way, like if that's not what I said. Yeah, that is what I said. Okay, that the more evolved the species, the less genetic diversity. And today, we have very little genetic diversity among humans. Okay, and part of that, the reason for that is that, we've been inbreeding for so long. We don't breed with gorillas or chimps, which are our closest relatives today. The last time we could have bred with someone was probably Neanderthal or maybe Florensis or one of those cousins. And no, we just bred within ourselves, and today we're washed out. That's what it is. Okay, so what little mutations we collect year after year from one generation to the other is knocked down through completely through through bottlenecks. Usually diseases, wars, so on, that wipe out suddenly big chunks of our population, and then we have a smaller founders effect. We have streamlined our genetics, and now we start all over again with fewer people. And if you do this over and over again, that defeats any little mutations that you collect day after day from one generation to the next. So no, in the end, we lose genetic diversity. Any species loses genetic diversity, okay, usually through disease. Okay, another issue. Fellow says, anyone who claims genetic diversity increases by inbreeding obviously hasn't raised dogs or other domestic animals. Look up animal husbandry, folks. And yeah, if you go to that site that he points out there, you'll see what the issue is. And they write the following. It says, the Canine Diversity Project is an attempt to acquaint breeders of domesticated dogs with the dangers of inbreeding and the overuse of popular sires. Okay? Both lead to the indiscriminate loss of genetic diversity. Okay? You can't inbreed because inbreeding results in loss of genetic diversity. And people don't all understand that, especially people who are geneticists. They don't understand that. They think we increase genetic diversity because we have all these mutations from one generation to the next. And it's like they don't understand that a species, any species, can only lose genetic diversity over thousands of years. Essentially, you can lose. You're going to win a little bit here, and then you lose because of bottleneck and founders effect. You win a little through mutation, you lose a lot through bottlenecks and founders effect. And so, yeah, no geneticist has figured that out to this day. Another issue fellow raises says, I thought modern plumbing was the cause of conquering most disease, along with food standards and things like that. Yeah, I agree. That is true, as far as I'm concerned, at least. If you look at especially the history of England in the 19th century, one of the things that preserved the population, why so many children were dying at the beginning of that century and very few died towards the end of this century, or a lot less, was the sanitary conditions. They cleaned the Thames, the river, And they started vaccinating people, if that helps. Maybe by then we have already collected quite a bit of defenses against common diseases, childhood diseases. And so, at some point, those diseases do not kill. They're endemic, but we survive them. Child gets sick but doesn't die. Okay, and once he doesn't die, he passes those beneficial genes to the next generation. Okay, so that's the theory. Whether you believe it or not, that's a separate issue, but that is the theory. Okay, another fellow raises an issue, says we should segregate groups of people in strongly divergent artificial environments where the original genetics and the new mutations will be selected differently with enforced fertility and child health care. Create novel and populous populations, species of man. That's been proposed by many people in the past, politicians, etc. First of all, that's politics. I don't do politics. In other words, I don't do recommendations in the sense, this is what you should do or any of that. I don't care about that at all. I try to explain causes and mechanisms. And so what we should do is not part of this channel. That's up to every person to decide what they should do. All we can do is present our case, theories, or whatever. Now, this thing about selecting, doing artificial insemination and preferential insemination, I don't think you're going to create a new species anyways. Or all you're going to do is what this other fellow said about dogs. All you're going to be doing is perpetuating inbreeding. And inbreeding is what? Loss of genetic diversity. So all you're doing is guaranteeing that we're going to die, maybe sooner than later. Okay? But again, humans will not die because of loss of genetic diversity. I want to make that absolutely clear. People are confused about that, about this channel. No, we're going to die in a mass extinction. That's got to do with food. It's got to do with economic collapse. Okay, nothing to do with, I can't say nothing to do with aging. It does have to do with aging in the sense that our economics depends on demand, and demand is a function of population. And if the population doesn't grow, it does affect our economics, only in that sense. Okay. Other than that, we're going to die because of economics. And what do I mean by that? I'm saying that money will be no more. We won't believe in money. We won't accept money because it will have from little to no value. And when that happens, not if, but when that happens, corporations that produce the food and distribute to the cities have no more incentive to do so. That's the theory. Okay. Okay. One final comment. Person said, "When are you going to make how to survive extinction video?" I think he said it in fun, but still, I'll address the issue. I'm saying there is nothing, absolutely nothing we can do about extinction, the extinction of our species. It's guaranteed. It will happen. No amount of foresight, no technology, no intelligence. Those are not antidotes. We cannot do anything about extinction. Okay, so I just want to make that absolutely clear.